Welcome back. Day 12 of Hammerween and weekend 2 of Vampire Weekends, in which we're going to be looking at the 8 non-Dracula vampire films produced by Hammer. Inside that miniseries, we're doing another miniseries because of those 8, 3 are a trilogy, and one is The Vampire Lovers from 1970, which kickstarts it, known as the Karnstein trilogy for the family of vampires that are mostly featured in it. So, as always, plot synopsis and then review. We're going to be filleting a lot of the plot here because so much happens. There are characters with multiple names, multiple time periods, there's flashbacks. Going to be giving you the bare bones here. Douglas Wilmer is Baron Hartog. We meet him mid-action as he's dispatching of some vampires sometime in the past. In the present, not our present, but the present of the story, so sometime in the 19th century, Peter Cushing is having a party for his beloved niece Laura. Peter Cushing's a general, and he's approached by one of the guests, the Countess, played by Dawn Adams, who we just met in The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. And she says, "Please, I have to go. One of my relatives is terribly sick. Could you look after my daughter for a few days? She'll be no bother at all. She's Ingrid Pitt." Right? So anybody who knows anything about Hammer films knows that Ingrid Pitt equals vampire lesbianism, right? So the fact that Ingrid Pitt is a vampire here won't be a surprise to anybody. So she's literally being invited in here. So that there's a re-establishment of some tropes that the vampire might need an invitation. So the Countess saying, "My daughter needs somewhere to stay for a few nights," gets the invitation for the vampire to be invited in. So Ingrid Pitt has the access. We have a re-establishment of the rules of this particular universe for vampires. So we know them for Dracula and whatnot, but for this, you can only kill them by stake or by beheading. That's it. And unlike the other vampires who literally get out their graves at night, these vampires do so in a ghostly fashion. So their spirits haunt and then can manifest at night and blah blah blah. But their body, their physical original body, still remains in the ground, looking young in state. Peter Cushing has invited Ingrid Pitt to stay. Ingrid Pitt forms a very fast friendship, which soon burgeons into a love affair with Laura. And it's a very innocently played love affair where it's not done for titillation. I mean, of course it is. Hammer at this point need a hit. So lesbian vampire sounds like a gore, chaps. What do you think? Will that make us some money? That's clearly what the intent is. But Roy Ward Baker, too much of an artist to do something too sleazy, decides, no, we're going to treat this as a proper kind of gothic romance. So it's all played very romantically. It's all played with tender kisses and embraces and whatnot. It just so happens that in this film, they let their full dresses slip down and the camera films it from the front this time. It's really the only difference, to be honest. But in terms of tone and in terms of structure, these do fit in nicely with Hammer's overall aesthetic. It's just that you're getting breasts and lesbianism. So the fury over these films, calm down. Anyways, back to the plot. Um, Vampire by name, vampire by nature. We know that that love affair is going to be doomed because, like falling in love with Dracula, not a good idea to fall in love with any vampire. Laura, who is having these young girls' first romantic crush feelings about Marcella, who Ingrid Pitt is playing, starts to wake up at night screaming And every night that she wakes up, she's a little more drained, literally and figuratively. She's told by the doctor, or her father is, Peter Cushing, uncle, sorry, it's just anemia, don't worry about it. Of course, it's not just anemia. She dies. It's vampirism. Peter Cushing vaguely remembers hearing about this Baron Hartog character who had something to do with vampires. So he goes off looking for him. Now, this has been a big success, of course, for the vampire involved, Ingrid Pitt as Marcella. So why not just do pretty much the same scheme again? So instead of a party, get the invite that way. This time we'll fake a road accident. So Dawn Adams as the Countess, who's not a vampire by the way, she just seems to work for Ingrid Pitt's character, but we never really established their relationship, which I like. It lets you kind of imagine a lot more. There's a road accident where the Countess's vehicles run off the road, blah, 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 blah. Oh, we have to continue on this journey, visit a sick relative. She's got a lot of sick relatives, though, Dawn Adams. But my daughter, could someone look after my daughter? And George Cole, the great George Cole, Minder, is on hand to say, yes, I will do so. No problem whatsoever. Now, Ingrid Pitt is going under the name of Carmilla. So her plan is obviously the same, just infiltrate this household. But she's been able to, again, wangle an invite. So she's been invited into the home just like before. So that's obviously one of the rules of this vampiric universe as well, until it isn't in the future films. So, very much the same happens again, where she has a passionate love affair with Madeline Smith, and she's Madeline Smith. I mean, for goodness sake, who wouldn't fall in love with Madeline Smith? She's amazing. She's young and innocent here, and that contrasts wonderfully with the way Ingrid Pitt plays it in her Germanic, Dietrich-like, sultry fashion. She's clearly wanting to parallel the great Marlena, but also contrast with the young and doe-eyed teenagers that she's up against. Because Ingrid Pitt was an older actress at the time, even though she's playing younger in this role. Although oddly she's not because she's an ancient vampire, but regardless. So she has an affair again with the daughter of this family and is likewise causing nightmares and likewise draining her of her life force gradually and gradually, and it's going to kill this poor girl. So Madeline Smith's life's on the line. This is the part where I'm really going to have to start filleting things out. Can I spoil this film for you? I think so, because nothing in it itself is going to shock you too much in terms of what happens. It's just that it's got some kind of convoluted structure along the way. So along the way, George Cole bumps into Peter Cushing, who is now traveling with Douglas Wilmer, who we met at the very start of the film in the past, killing off vampires, and we're told that Ingrid Pitt is actually the last remaining of the Karnsteins, who are an ancient family of vampires, and that Baron Hartog has been trying to find this last one because they killed his sister, and he's been trying to get the last of them so he can the family line. So fair enough, we now have a kind of squad assembled to fight the vampire, but we also have the vampire still on the prowl at uh, George Cole's residence, because not only in this case has she seduced Madeline Smith, she's also seduced Kate O'Mara as the governess, Mademoiselle Peridot, and she's been able to use the affair that she's had with Mademoiselle Peridot to convince kind of handyman of the house that she's that she's the vampire, the mademoiselle is the vampire, etc., etc. This is where it starts to get quite convoluted. So she's playing a kind of 3D chess structure this time to try and gorge herself a lot more. We're told that she this time she'll want a good long rest, so she needs to gorge a lot more. One body won't do it. So there are attacks in town this time. Villagers are being munched on. So those attacks that happen in town are clearly just, you know, pick up and love them and leave them. They're not passionate affairs like the ones that were depicted with Madeline Smith and with Pippa Steele. They're just vampire attacks. So she's just feeding for blood in those affairs. But she is still maintaining a very passionate liaison with Madeline Smith. So Ingrid Pitt, again, is playing these multiple parts with a commonality, but with a greater sense of the ancient and the other about her, which of course comes from her being German herself. You know, she's able to just stand out a lot more as an actress, but also because we now find out she's Markala Karnstein. So she's been Marcella, she's been Carmilla, now she's Markala. Not very catchy to throw those three together. Marcella, Carmilla, Markala. Who's the kind of matriarch, all that's left of the Karnsteins, and we have to stop her now in order to save the mortal soul, blah, 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 blah. And from then the film reaches a conclusion, which I won't spoil actually. I'll let you enjoy from there, and if you have seen it already, you'll know why. Review time. I think this film's tremendously undervalued by some. Um, Again, this whole period is called the lesbian vampire period by some who kind of denigrate it with that. Oh, it's just about these buxom women and uh, titillation and whatnot. Well, Hammer were getting those kind of reviews for The Curse of Frankenstein. People were saying that about great actresses like Hazel Court and Barbara Shelley. I think it's nonsense, absolutely nonsense, and not a little sexist to suggest that either. The only reason lesbianism could possibly exist is for titillation, not because women can have feelings for each other. I mean, it's ridiculous. The production itself looks lush. It's very lavish. Hammer have clearly decided we're going to do this as classily as we possibly can. We're not going to just do a tawdry exploitation film here. We're going to try and really do this as upmarket as you can do a lesbian vampire film. When the censor said we're going to have issues, you and us, we're going to have issues, Hammer said, with us? We're just doing an adaptation of a novel that's nearly 100 years old. It came out before Dracula. And that shut the censors up because the novel, a page of the illustration of which you can see behind me, Camille, from 1874, is indeed a lesbian vampire novel, with the themes obviously a little toned down for the time. But the themes are all there in 1874. So Hammer were completely within the rights to say, hey, that came out before Dracula. So if anything, this is a more faithful vampire story than Dracula. So hey, don't be censoring us, y'all. I don't know why Hammer went American for that. But, so Hammer got away with that from the censors, who were already being a lot more liberal at this point anyway. Society had become much more permissive by the turn of the 70s. So mostly it's boobs and whatnot that you see in this film. There is a bit of full frontal nudity, lasts for a few brief seconds, but I think that has been excised for a few versions. But regardless, in the restored version, it's all there, if you pardon the pun. The performances, again, Ingrid Pitt's fantastic. She has to be convincingly evil because you need to hate what she ultimately is, Markala Karnstein, the actual original. But she has to be flirtatious and open enough that you'd believe that these girls would just fancy her. they'd have something just going, oh, she's, you know, I like her. So she has to be exotic enough for that to be the case. She also has to be authoritative enough. Titive. She's plenty titive, I'll tell you that. Authoritative enough that you can understand why she would command the likes of Don Adams as the Countess to do her bidding. So she has that very much. A few people criticize her performance in this. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's exactly where it needs to be. Madeline Smith is brilliantly cast as the more doe-eyed Emma, who's the second girl that Ingrid Pitt seduces. She's brilliant. She's exactly what you need for an innocent, potentially lost. Douglas Wilmore is going to go down as nobody's favorite vampire hunter, as Baron Hartog. But he's pretty badass when you get to see the scenes where he does indeed get down to some vampire slaying. And you get, again, I skipped over them in the plot synopsis, but some interesting flashback stuff to see him really going tonto on vampires. It's pretty interesting. Kate O'Mara as the governess, she could easily have been Markala herself. I mean, she's got that wonderfully seductive quality too. But she's great as the governess. And having her and Ingrid Pitt as a lesbian couple at one point in the plot as well. So, I mean, that's just talk about a power struggle. Ingrid Pitt and Kate O'Mara. That's just hmm. George Cole, strange casting, looking back on it, but he works. He's what it needs to be. He's not an aristocrat or anything, but he's perfectly normal English guy who seems to have a bit of money. That's all he needs to be. He's fine. He's George Cole. He's always going to be good. Peter Cushing, interesting because clearly Peter Cushing has been cast here so that they can put vampire Cushing on posters and just have enough people who maybe won't be swayed by cleavage, come and get your cleavage, won't be swayed enough by that, but will be swayed by, hey, up, they've got one of them gothics on again. Peter Cushing's fighting at vampires. So there's a sense that he's really only here for that because his character doesn't require an actor of the stature of Peter Cushing, and it doesn't give him anything to do that requires the stature of Peter Cushing at all, not even remotely. He's good as the general, but there are charitably 10,000 actors who could have done what he had to do here. I'm never going to complain about getting more Peter Cushing, but it's the only cynical part of this film. When people think this, look, I'm even doing the Cushing finger. When Peter Cushing uses the finger, shit is on. When Peter Cushing's casting is more cynical than the actual uh, tits coming out from lesbian vampires, you know that there's nothing terribly cynical about this film after all. I think some people just had a hard on for criticizing Hammer, and hey, now they've got nudity in it, we can really go for them. Was you know, some of the outlets who like to attack them just had more ammunition for a change. I think we can just about leave it there. I think that covers all the rough bases we need to hit for this one, to be honest. Join me tomorrow. We'll be doing another vampire film. Whether or not we continue with the Karnstein film or another vampire film, maybe a trip to the vampire circus, who knows? I haven't yet decided. But regardless, I'll see you tomorrow for day 13 and Vampire Weekend 2's conclusion of Hammerween. Until then, my friends, have a good one.